This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser and this is my husband Joe.
Hello.
Hello. And today we are drinking rooibos tea with lemon and sugar pancake flavour. I don't really know how they've made that. Joe requested pond water, so...
I mean, let's face it, all of the teas, they either taste like minty pond water or they taste like fruity pond water. It's kind of how it works.
Don't! I think it's great. How's that one? Lemony pond water?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so today is episode 254.
Jesus.
Can you believe how many of these we've done?
That's ridiculous.
I feel like we should just stop.
Should we just stop? I can't tell whether anyone's listening.
Oh, they are?
They are?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just never tell us.
All right.
Hi, people.
Hello, silent audience.
So yeah, today's episode is all about how originality is wildly misunderstood.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll come to that. But for now, I just think that loads of people have heard the advice, just be yourself, okay? Maybe not in that tone of voice, but...
Do drag queens typically give out advice?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
But I'm not blaming drag queens. I'm blaming the internet marketing and life coaching world, really.
Right.
And writing coach world. Just be yourself. End of advice.
Nice.
Yeah, cheers, thanks.
Thanks.
But before that, what are you reading at the moment, Joe?
I'm reading The Bastard of Istanbul by Elif Shah.
No, it's not Shah. I wrote it wrong. What's the name?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
Man. Hang on.
Well, this is going well. You write notes. I assume...
Elif Shafak.
Shafak.
There you go.
Okay. Cool.
Are you enjoying it?
It was a little bit like a sci-fi book. You know those kind of epic sci-fi things where in the first couple of chapters they introduce like 600 characters whose names you can't pronounce?
Yes.
It was a little bit like that.
Okay. It's set in Istanbul, is it? In Turkey?
Some of it is. Some of it's in San Francisco, but they're still Turkish or certainly not Anglo-ish names. It's a bit tricky, but I mean, yes, it's well written. It's very nice. It's also making me realise that maybe I'm getting old and I need some reading glasses because the writing is very small.
Well, maybe you are. Maybe you should.
Getting very old.
And I'm reading fiction at the moment. I'm reading The Magician's Assistant by Anne Patchett, which had me crying within 2 pages, and I haven't really stopped yet.
Oof.
But it's great. I love it. It's just beautifully written. It's one of those books, again, that nothing much happens, but it's just wonderful. So do you remember when I read A Gentleman in Moscow? Did you read A Gentleman in Moscow?
I haven't read A Gentleman in Moscow.
You need to read it because, again, nothing much happens, but it's just a wonderful book.
Okay.
This reminds me a little bit of that in the sense of kind of story and plot and all the rest of it, but it's just, Anne Patchett writes just so beautifully. And so I'm loving it, really loving it. And my non-fiction book at the moment is Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall.
Okay.
Which I'm finding really interesting. And I'm just about to start on the Western Europe section.
Right.
So looking at why, the United States of America is like one giant country now, anyway, because they violently, oppressed the original inhabitants. But the geography of the country was such that it kind of shoves everybody into the same place. Because there's like 2 big mountain ranges, one on either side of the states, and so there's the whole Great Plains in the middle. Whereas the Western Europe, there's loads of rivers, there's loads of mountain ranges, there's loads of things that provide natural borders, and that's why there are so many languages and different countries and things. We haven't all merged into one big smoosh,
right?
And why we're unlikely to do so. So it's really, really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. And this week at Casa Dingle, we've got loads of vegetables coming up. Radishes are very flamboyant.
Radishes are really giving it a good go.
They are actually a variety of radish called the flamboyant radish.
Okay.
They're living up to their name. I've got leeks. No onions yet.
No onions. Onions are being tardy.
Yeah. Lots of
peas.
Peas are coming up, yeah. That's
tomatoes.
I think loads of tomatoes. I've got way too many tomatoes.
I think that's what happens when you plant tomatoes. You get too many tomatoes.
If anyone would like any tomato plants and you live within,
whatever distance you're prepared to drive to come and get tomatoes.
Yeah. You are welcome. So we must have 100 tomato plants.
Yeah.
Don't need that many.
It's enough.
Well, I mean, I don't mind having that many, but I'm going to need a lot more pots. Going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been reading and doing this week. Also flaws. Also, look at Joe's hair if you're watching this on the video. I cut his hair at the weekend, and now it does no longer look like a mushroom.
Yep. A little bit more Sideshow Bob, a little bit less mushroom.
But I think overall, considering that I am not trained in any way to cut hair, I think I've done a pretty good job.
I've got to admit that I wasn't really considering going to be on video today when I got out of the shower. Otherwise, I would have made it look a little bit
more like I did a good job.
Yeah, it's a bit out of control.
Anyway, on to the subject of today's podcast. Originality is wildly misunderstood.
Right.
And also, linked to that, terrible advice given out by various people in, everywhere. For example, when you need to go and give a speech or do anything, what's the advice invariably trotted out?
Be yourself.
Just be yourself. It's like, okay, fine. But it's not great advice, and it masquerades as like profound and good advice. It's one of those meaningless phrases that people trot out to kind of make you feel better. But actually, I find it very stressful when people are like, just be yourself. And I'm like, but which self should I be? Which version of myself should I be? And I'm like, because we all have different versions of ourselves.
For sure.
Depending on where we are and what we do. And, well, most of us do.
And how Catholic your parents are.
Yes. I'm talking about neurotypical people.
Yes.
Tend to have different versions of themselves.
Yes.
But even more, I would say, actually, non-neurotypical people who mask to try and fit in all the time, which is exhausting. I mean, I know how exhausting it is I know how tiring it is to, like, just, be on your best behaviour, which is being one sort of person. So I can't imagine how exhausting it must be for people with autism or something to try and be normal, normal, whatever that is. So, yeah. But I'm talking about neurotypical people here because that is what I know about. Okay, of course we have to be ourselves, that's fine. But how do we do that?
It's difficult to be someone else.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people try. And that's actually one of the problems is like, oh, okay, but how do I be myself? And then I look at other people and it's like, oh, but they're really cool and I'd like to be like them. And then, that's when people start getting pissy about being copied. And, it happens when you're little, definitely with little girls. I don't know with little boys so much, but, you'd be like, oh, I'm going to copy the older girl in the cul-de-sac or whatever because she's really cool. And it's really flattering. And sometimes the older girl takes it as flattering and sometimes you get bullied for it because people can be shits. But yeah, and I don't know if that happens for boys as well. It's like, oh, I want to be like him.
I don't remember it happening, but I kind of don't, I think I became sentient at about age 14, to be honest.
Sentient?
Everything before then was just like, I don't know, just doing what I was supposed to do.
Cool. Okay, that's sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, today I'm gonna be talking about why this advice is a problem, especially when it comes to writing and what we can do instead. And it's a problem because it stops people writing and it stops people doing work that matters because it implies that unless you know who you are and you're like, oh, I need to know who I am before I can write. It's like none of us ever really know who we are or a work in progress. We don't stop until we're dead, right?
You don't set into one thing.
Oh, I hope not. Well, I mean, problematic people do. But, we want to be changing and growing and hopefully becoming better people. As
developing and, yeah.
Yeah, and just learning more and just, the only things that don't change are dead things. So yeah, it kind of makes you think, oh, I need to become a certain type of person before I can write. Before I can write my book or my message or put my words out there. And it's not helpful. And also, it just doesn't give you any clues. It's one of those rainbows and glittery unicorn fart pieces of advice that people put out there as if it's helpful. But nobody seems to know how to implement it, which is understandable because it's really hard. It's like one of those things that on the surface sounds simple. It's like, oh, just be yourself. But actually there are many layers of complexity to this and nobody ever goes into them. And I'm certainly not going to go into them all today, but I am going to help people to find a little bit more who they are and their voice and their message and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
I hope. So yes, it is confusing. It is overwhelming. Giving people this instruction without any context kind of misses the point. A couple of other problems it can lead to: epic comparison syndrome and imposter syndrome. Looking around, because I do this all the time, and it's like, I tend to look around at people inside and outside my industry and be like, oh, they're really cool.
They've
Ooh.
definitely got their shit together.
Yeah, they've definitely got their shit together. That was really cool. And I'd love to be like them. And I swing wildly between that and, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm so boring and dull and I'm just going to hide under this blanket and stop trying to run my business. And that's what I swing between. And that's kind of what the world is set up to make us do. You know, maybe not intentionally, but that...
As a slight aside, there's that whole thing where you are seeing the outside projection of what people want you to see.
The highlight reel.
Yeah, and inside, you can see all your own gnarly, gristly inside bits yourself.
Ooh.
You know, so you're comparing the shiny, well-lacquered outside of somebody else to the gnarly inside of yourself.
And
It's not fair.
and also, and not only that is 100% true, and not only that, but we will watch, like there's somebody who does videos, Jocelyn. Hi, Jocelyn.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Who's awesome and hilarious and really smart, and she does tiny tips for your brain. And I love her videos, and she's one of the inspirational people that made me decide to make my own series of videos that are hopefully funny. I find them funny anyway. But like I look at her videos and think, oh, they're perfect, they're great. I bet she looks at them and is like, they're good enough to go out, and she sees all of the bad stuff in them. And that's another problem, is that we tend to see the best in other people and the worst in ourselves. Sure. And so that, I mean, it's kind of linked to that, you know, seeing other people's highlight reels, but also that we don't notice other people's flaws. And so...
Have you ever installed skirting boards?
No, because they're really annoying.
Right. So when you're doing skirting boards, right, you cut the boards and you haven't got the angle absolutely cock on, and you know there's a little gap down the back and you can see the join, and it's all a bit like, oh, this is painful, and you paint them and there's like hairy bits coming off your brush and there's still a little gap.
Fucking
and you
paintbrushes.
And you can see where that screw is, so you polyfiller over that and sand it down, and then that doesn't look quite the same as the wood behind it, and you're just like, this is a freaking nightmare, right? But you are like 3 inches away from your skirting boards, on your hands and knees, like right here, so doing skirting boards. So you see everything, and you're like, oh my God, this is bullshit. How do people do this for a living? Christ. And then you throw everything back in the shed and you go away, and you come back to the next day and you've just got skirting boards.
And they look great.
They look great. They look like everybody else. They look like a grown-up put them there because they're skirting boards. They're fine.
Because how often do you lie on the floor 3 inches away from your skirting boards?
You don't.
Or most people don't.
Not often. No. So, yeah, it's like you see all of the up-close defects and imperfections. But anybody else walking into your house...
You're like, oh, they look great.
Oh, yeah, skirting boards. Nice job. Cool.
Yeah.
Move on.
So, yeah.
Same thing.
It is the same thing. No, that was a really good analogy, though. I really like that. I like your skirting board analogy. And that is what we do. And this be yourself advice contributes to that kind of level of microscopic analysis of yourself and all of your flaws. And this macroscopic analysis of everybody else and how amazing they are. And neither of those two things are accurate or true.
No.
And so yeah. But this also happens with books as well. And we look at what's already out there and we think, well, what's the point in writing my book? It's already been done. It's been done better than I could do it, and I can't make it original. You know, I need to write this original book. And then someone like me says, but we haven't heard your story, and that's fine. But how do we tell our story like us? How do we tell it as us? And we are told often and loudly as writers that we need to find our voices and our style, and that we need to be original. And that is true, but as I said right at the beginning, originality is massively misunderstood.
Okay.
So, to the point of the podcast, we think that to be original means to come up with something entirely unique that has never been seen before or made before.
Right.
And that's impossible. And it's stupid, and we can't do it, and even genius inventors can't do it. And so, you know, we are, related to that, we are the sum of our experiences. We are who we are is made of where we've been and what we've done and what we've experienced and who we've known. Right? We are not born fully formed humans. We are marvellous mimics.
Right. And
like I was saying at the beginning, when we're little, we're like, oh, I really want to be like her. And so you dress like her and you copy her mannerisms, and my little brother used to copy everything that I said, and mostly to annoy me, I think. But also because I think there was a time when he looked up to me as his big sister. But that's what we do. We look up to other people and we're like, oh, this is how we learn to walk. It's how we learn to talk.
Yeah.
As children. It's how we work. And when it comes to writing and when it comes to being an adult and finding out who you are, we forget all of that stuff. We forget that that's how humans work. And so we're like, oh, I need to come up with this entirely original idea or I cannot write a book. And it's like, okay, well, that's quite a lot of pressure.
Good way of not writing a book.
It's a really good way of not writing a book. And also it's really unhelpful. And also it's kind of arrogant as well. It's like the idea that anybody could come up with this fully formed idea from nowhere. Nobody can do that. And so I think, our own selves, and I'm talking about me and everybody else, is that like we are both extremely self-critical and extremely arrogant, in that it's just like there's this kind of delusions of grandeur and also this shrinking of our self-worth.
Examination of faults.
Yeah, and they're one and the same thing. And it's, everybody suffers from this from time to time. This is not like, you don't have to be like a narcissistic person or a self-absorbed person. It's like everybody shows these traits from time to time. And so if you can start to recognize where they are and where they're coming from and when they're stopping you from doing the things that matter to you, that's when it becomes really useful. So, being original in your book and everywhere else. We are the sum of other ideas and our own thoughts on it, right? Which is where many people fall down. We don't think enough about the stuff that we're taking in. And I think that's why we struggle to come up with original ideas. So here is my, in a minute, I'm going to give you 3 ways you can be creative and original in your writing and ideas. But first I want to talk a little bit about copying, because it gets a really bad rap. And if it becomes plagiarism, it should get a bad rap, because plagiarism is just putting other people's ideas out there wholesale as your own, basically stealing people's ideas. But that's not the whole story, because we can't do anything interesting or original by simply copying what came before. We might find a little bit of success, but it won't last. There's a reason the phrase pale imitation exists, right? It just gets diluted. So what we need to do is grab hold of an existing really great idea and use it as a springboard for something new. And that's where we get a bit lost. We get a bit lost in the, am I copying people? Am I plagiarizing? No, I mean, it's not difficult to tell if you're copying or plagiarizing.
Being inspired by.
Being inspired by is different. And Lady Gaga is a really good example of this. So Lady Gaga is obviously heavily influenced by Madonna, right?
Right.
But she's nothing like Madonna. She is entirely different. She took aspects of Madonna that she loved, put her own twist on things, and then came up with her own ideas from the old ideas and made them entirely her own. Lady Gaga is a really good example of originality and how it works and where it came from. And, you could probably find interviews with her or whatever where she talks about it, and, maybe I'm way off the mark, but I can see the parallels between her and Madonna, and I don't think she would argue with that either.
No.
We're influenced by people. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how to be original and how to come up with original ideas. So here are 3 ways that you can be creative and original in your writing and ideas, and I want you to practice them, because they take practice like everything else. So way the first, read widely, especially writers you love. And the number of people who tell me they want to write a book and then tell me they don't read in the same sentence, it just makes me roll my eyes very heavily. And it makes me tired, because it's like you can't expect to be a good writer if you don't read. I'm not talking just, I know that some people have trouble with like physically reading. I'm talking audiobooks as well.
Yeah.
I'm talking graphic novels. I'm talking watch Netflix series. Watch films and things, but you do have to read, like make an effort to actually read words on paper, because it's important if you want to write. So read a lot, especially writers you love. Read books and articles and essays and poems, and read stories, listen to stories. Look at the writing styles and the turns of phrases that the writers that you love use, and then write them down.
Actively read. Don't just kind of read for 5 minutes before you fall asleep, but actively read the thing and acknowledge what's happening in front of your face.
Yeah, and if you are the type of person who writes in books, grab a highlighter and highlight turns of phrase you like. And like, I do this. If I find a turn of phrase, I'm like, I really wish I'd written that. I'll copy it out and I'll put it in a file. And I might pull it out later, and I won't copy it word for word and use it in my own writing. But what happens is that it becomes something that's mine then. Like I will take a turn of phrase, or I will take aspects of it, or a tone of voice. So you can weave this stuff into your writing. You pick up the elements of other people's voices that you love and discard the bits that don't fit. And eventually you will develop a writing style that is wholly your own. Don't have to do it from scratch. That is really hard. Sure. And not possible, I don't think.
And I think as well, it's important that you're talking about a range of authors, aren't you? So it's not that you kind of go, I would like to write like Terry Pratchett, therefore I'm going to read everything Terry Pratchett writes and then rehash it.
Yeah, because you will unconsciously sound like Terry Pratchett. Yeah. Or a pale imitation of.
Yeah. You need to find a selection.
Yeah. I think. Definitely, absolutely.
And be blending them.
Yeah, and you will go through phases as well. So, like, I'm going through another phase of Terry Pratchett at the moment, but I can feel I'm about to go through a phase of Anne Patchett. because she's amazing. Also going through a little bit of a phase of Bernardini Evaristo. And so I'm going to be picking up aspects of their writing and their turns of phrase, and I will be unconsciously using them. And it's not about copying exactly what people are saying word for word. This is really important.
It's about style.
Yes. So first one was read widely. Second, look at other people's ideas and really think about them actively. So this is a really, really useful thing to do as well. And you can do this in a really structured way. So if somebody has written a book about an idea and you can read that book, then have a think about, what do you agree with about what they're saying? Write all of that down. Write it down in bullet points. What do you disagree with about what they're saying? And write all that down as well, and give examples. And then take their original idea and do your own research on the topic. Read actual primary research paper, not just the
Facebook shortcuts.
Yeah, so many things to say about that bullshit. But yeah, do your own research on the topic and sit down. And this is the really important thing. Think about what you actually think about it, because so often we will regurgitate other people's ideas as our own, and we're like, oh, I read this thing and it's really interesting, and I agree, and it's like. Okay, but why? Why do you agree? And do you agree with the whole thing? And it's okay to really admire somebody and love their ideas, but then disagree with aspects of them. That's good. It's a good thing. So, you do all of that stuff. You write down what you agree with, what you don't agree with, do some research, sit down and think about what you think and write those thoughts down. And suddenly, woo, you've got your own original idea.
Yeah, maybe you've got a new theory, or you've got a whole new concept.
Yeah. This isn't about simply recycling other people's ideas. Use them as a springboard to find out what you really think and believe about something, and make it your own. And that's how this works. There's nothing wrong with that. And then the third is go back to your own previous work and ideas. I do this all the time. I go back to old articles that I've written, and sometimes I read them and I'm like, oh, I don't agree with literally everything that I've said there. And that's fine as well, because we change, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. So, look at your own previous work, your own ideas. How have your opinions changed? What do you believe now that you didn't believe before, and why? What do you disagree with now? What do you still agree with? How has the topic itself changed? How has the world around it changed? How has the context changed? So I hope that's 3 useful things to help people be original in their writing.
I think so.
Even if I say so myself.
Nice idea.
Thanks.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, again, these 3 ideas that I've just told you, they're not original in the sense of I didn't spring them out of my brain fully formed. This is stuff that I've learned over all of my years of writing.
Yes.
And that's okay. And also reading other people's ideas about writing. So yeah. What's the takeaway, Joe?
Stop trying to have an entirely 100% original idea strike you. Start reading, start analysing, start copying, and start thinking.
Yes. Thank you. Cool. So I hope you found that useful. Drop me an email. Tell me, did you find it useful? Have you found it interesting? Are you enjoying it? Do you wish we'd shut the fuck up? Email us and let us know. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go and give us a rating and a review.
5 stars.
5 stars. If you don't like it, then other podcasts are available. And yeah, coming up next week, I think we're going to talk about the language we use and where it takes us and what it does to us.
Big topic.
Big topic. Yeah. Obviously, we're going to take a very tiny part of that topic in a specific context and talk about it like that. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about language. And if you are interested in writing a book and you're like, oh, I don't even think I've got time. Who's got time to write a book? That's such a massive thing to do. I hear you. It is just who's got time to write a book? So I would like to invite you to the very first Moxie Books Tiny Beetle Steps Masterclass.
Ooh.
I know, right? Happening on Monday, March the 29th, 7 p.m. till 9 p.m.
Cool.
And it's going to be 100 of your English pounds for 2 hours, 90 minutes of masterclass and then 30 minutes of Q&A. There will be 3 bonuses to be won. The bonuses are 30-minute consultation with me. If you turn up, do the whole thing, and then do the competition and then get the answer right. I'll pick the name out of the hat. So yes, you can come and have a look at that. The link is in the show notes if you would like to book in. Also have a new audiobook out. You can find it on Audible, funnily enough. That's what she said.
Nice.
It's getting good reviews. Just been on the radio about it a couple of times.
Cool.
And I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, as always, dear listener. It's a pleasure talking at you. Screaming into the void. And thank you for being awesome, Joe.
No worries. Vicky.
We'll be back same time next week.
Bye.
Bye!
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.